8. Devotional paths to the divine. You may have seen people perform ritual of worship or singing bhajans, kirtans or qawwalis, or even repeating the name of God in silence, and notice that some of them are moved to tears. Such intense devotion or love of God is the legacy of various kinds of bhakti and Sufi movements that have evolved since the 8th century. The idea of a supreme God. Before large kingdoms emerged, different groups of people worshipped their own gods and goddesses as people were brought together through the growth of towns, trade, and empires. New ideas began to develop. The idea that all living things pass through countless cycles of birth and rebirth, performing good deeds and bad came to be widely accepted. Similarly, the idea that all human beings are not equal even at birth gained ground during this period. The belief that social privilege came from birth in a noble family or a high caste was the subject of many learned texts. Many people were uneasy with such ideas and turned to the teachings of the Buddha or the Jainas, according to which it was possible to overcome social differences and break the cycle of rebirth through personal effort. Others felt attracted to the idea of a supreme God who could deliver humans from such bondage if approached with devotion or bhakti. This idea, advocated in the Bhagavad Gita, grew in popularity in the early centuries of the Common Era. Shiva, Vishnu, and Durga as supreme deities came to be worshipped through elaborate rituals. At the same time, gods and goddesses worshipped in different areas came to be identified with Shiva, Vishnu, or Durga. In the process, local myths and legends became a part of the Puranic stories, and methods of worship recommended in the Purans were introduced into the local cults. Eventually, the Puranas also laid down that it was possible for devotees to receive the grace of God regardless of their caste status. The idea of bhakti became so popular that even Buddhists and Jainas adopted these beliefs. Figure a page from a South Indian manuscript of the Bhagavad Gita. You can observe this process of local myths and legends receiving wider acceptance even today. Can you find some examples around you? Comment this. A new kind of bhakti in South India, Niners and Alvars. The 7th to 9th centuries saw the emergence of new religious movements led by the Niners, saints devoted to Shiva, and Alvar, saints devoted to Vishnu, who came from all castes, including those considered untouchable like the Pulayar and the Panars. They were sharply critical of the Buddhists and Jainas and preached ardent love of Shiva or Vishnu as the path to salvation. They drew upon the ideals of love and heroism as found in the Sangam literature, the earliest example of Tamil literature composed during the early centuries of the Common Era, and blended them with the values of bhakti. The Nainars and Alvars went from place to place composing exquisite poems in praise of the deities enshrined in the villages they visited and set them to music. Niners and Alvars. There were 63 Niners who belonged to different caste backgrounds such as potters, untouchable, worker, peasants, hunters, soldiers, brahmanas, and chiefs. The best known among them were Appar, Sambandar, Sundarar, and Manikavasagar. There are two sets of complication of their songs, Devaram and Tiruvakam. There were 12 Alvars who came from equally divergent backgrounds, the best known being Perialvar, his daughter Andal, Tondaratipodi, Alvar, and Nammalvar. Their songs were compiled in the Dibba Prabandham. Hagiography, writing of saints' lives. Figure, a bronze image of Manikavasagar. Between the 10th and 12th centuries, the Chola and Panda kings built elaborate temples around many of the shrines visited by the saint poets, strengthening the links between the Bhakti tradition and temple worship. This was also the time when their poems were compiled. Besides hagiographies or religious biographies of the Alvars and Niners were also composed. Today we use this text as source for writing histories of the Bhakti tradition. The Devotee and the Lord. This is a composition of Manikavasagar. Into my vile body of flesh you came as though it were a temple of gold, and soothed me wholly and saved me. O Lord of grace, O gem most pure, sorrow and birth and death and illusion, you took from me and set me free. O bliss, O light, I have taken refuge in you, and never can I be parted from you. How does the poet describe his relationship with the deity? Comment this. Philosophy and Bhakti. Shankara, one of the most influential philosophers of India, was born in Kerala in the 8th century. He was an advocate of Advaita, or the doctrine of the oneness of individual souls and the supreme God, which is the ultimate reality. He taught that Brahman, the only or ultimate reality, was formless and without any attributes. He considered the world around us to be an illusion or Maya, and preached renunciation of the world and adoption of the path of knowledge to understand the true nature of Brahman and attain salvation. Ramanuja, born in Tamil Nadu in the 11th century, was deeply influenced by the Alvars. According to him, the best means of attaining salvation was through intense devotion to Vishnu. Vishnu, in his grace, helps the devotee to attain the bliss of union with him. He propounded the doctrine of Vishishta or qualified oneness, in that the soul, even when ununited with the Supreme God, remained distinct. Ramanuja's doctrine greatly inspired the new strand of Bhakti which developed in North India subsequently. Try and find out more about the ideas of Sankara or Ramanuja. Comment this. Vashabhanna's Virasaivism. We noted earlier the connection between the Tamil Bhakti movement and temple worship. This is turn led to a reaction that is best represented in the Virashaiva movement initiated by Basavanna and his companions like Allama Prabhu and Akka Mahadevi. This movement began in Karnataka in the mid-12th century. The Brishaivas argued strongly for the equality of all human beings and against Brahmanical ideas about caste and the treatment of women. They were also against all forms of ritual and idol worship. Virashaiva Bachanas. These are Bachanas or saying attributed to Basavanna. The rich will make temples for Shiva. What shall I, a poor man, do? My legs are pillars, the body the shrine, the head a cupola of gold. Listen, O Lord of the meeting rivers, things standing shall fall, but the moving ever shall stay. What is the temple that Basavanna is offering to God? Comment this. The Saints of Maharashtra. The Vaishnava poet saints of Maharashtra such as Ganeshwar, Namadeva, Eknath and Tukaram were devotees of Lord Vittala. Devotion around Lord Vittala gave rise to the Varkari sect, which lay emphasis on an annual pilgrimage to Pandharpur. The cult of Vittala emerged as a powerful mode of devotion and was very popular amongst the people. From the 13th to the 17th centuries, Maharashtra saw a great number of saint poets whose songs in simple Marathi continued to inspire people. The most important among them were Dyaneshwar, Ganeshwar, Namdev, Ekant and Tukaram, as well as women like Shakubai and the family of Chokhamela, who belonged to the untouchable Mahar caste. This regional tradition of bhakti focused on the Vittala, a form of Vishnu temple in Pandharpur, as well as on the notion of a personal God residing in the hearts of all people. The saint poets rejected all forms of ritualism, outward display of piety, and social differences based on birth. In fact, they even rejected the idea of renunciation and preferred to live with their families, earning their livelihood like any other person while humbly serving fellow human beings in need. A new humanist idea emerged as they insisted that bhakti lay in sharing others' pain. As the famous Gujarati saint Narsi Mehta said, they are Vaishnavas who understand the pain of others. Questioning the social order. This is an Abhang Marathi devotional hymn of Saint Tukaram. He who identifies with the battered and the beaten, mark him as a saint, for God is with him. He holds every forsaken man close to his heart. He treats a slave as his own son, says Tuka. I won't be tired to repeat again, such a man is God in person. Here is an abhang composed by Chokamela's son. You made us low caste. Why don't you face that fact, great Lord? Our whole life left over food to eat. You should be ashamed of this. You have eaten in our home. How can you deny it? Choka's son Karmamela asks, why did you give me life? Discuss the ideas about the social order expressed in this composition. comment this. Nakpantis, Siddhas and Yogis. A number of religious groups that emerged during the period criticized the ritual and other aspects of conventional religion and the social order, using simple logical arguments. Among them were the Nathpanthis, Siddhacharas and Yogis. They advocated renunciation of the world. To them, the path to salvation lay in meditation on the formless, ultimate reality and the realization of oneness with it. To achieve this, they advocated intense training of the mind and body through practices like yogasanas, breathing exercise, and meditation. These groups became particularly popular among low castes. Their criticisms of conventional religion created the ground for devotional religion to become a popular force in northern India. Figure a fireside gathering of ascetics. Islam and Sufism. The saints had much in common with the Sufis, so much so that it is believed that they adopted many ideas of each other. Sufis were Muslim mystics. They rejected outward religiosity and emphasized love and devotion to God and compassion towards all fellow human beings. Islam propagated strict monotheism or submission to one God. In the 8th and 9th centuries religion, scholars developed different aspects of the holy law, Shariat, and theology of Islam. While the religion of Islam gradually became more complex, Sufis provided it with an additional dimension that favored a more personal devotion to God. The Sufis often rejected the elaborate rituals and codes of behavior demanded by Muslim religious scholars. They sought union with God much as a lover seeks his beloved with a disregard for the world. Like the saint poets, the Sufis too composed poems expressing their feelings and a rich literature in prose, including anecdotes and fables developed around them. Among the great Sufis of Central Asia were Ghazali, Rumi, and Sadi. Like the Nathpanthis, Siddhas, and Yogis, the Sufis too believe that the heart can be trained to look at the world in a different way. They developed elaborate methods of training using zikr, chanting of a name or sacred formula, contemplation, sama, singing, rags, dancing, discussion of parables, breath control, etc., under the guidance of a master or peer. Thus emerged the silsilas, a spiritual genealogy of Sufi teachers, each following a slightly different method, tariqa, of instruction and ritual practice. Figure mystics in ecstasy. In Kashmir, the Rishi order of Sufism flourished in the 15th and 16th centuries. This order was established by Sheikh Nasiruddin, Sheikh Nuruddin Wali, also known as Nund Rishi, and had a deep impact on the life of the people in Kashmir. A number of shrines dedicated to Rishi saints can be found in many parts of Kashmir. Figure a page from a manuscript of the Quran, Deccan, late 15th century. A large number of Sufis from Central Asia settled in Hindustan from the 11th century onward. This process was strengthened with the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, chapter 3, when several major Sufi centers developed all over the subcontinent. The Chishti Silsila was among the most influential orders. It had a long line of teachers like Khaja Moinuddin Chishti of Ajmer, Kutubuddin Bakhtiar Kaki of Delhi, Baba Farid of Punjab, Khaja Nijamuddin Aulia of Delhi, and Bandanawaj Gisudaraj of Gulbarga. The Sufi masters held their assemblies in their khanqahs or hospices. Devotees of all description, including members of the royalty and nobility and ordinary people, flocked to those khanqahs. They discussed spiritual matters, sought the blessing of the saints in solving their worldly problems, or simply attended the music and dance sessions. Hospice, house of rest for travelers, especially one kept by religious orders. Often, people attributed Sufi masters with miraculous powers that could relieve others of their illness and troubles. The tomb or dargah of a Sufi saint became a place of pilgrimage to which thousands of people of all faiths thronged. Figure, devotees of all backgrounds visit Sufi shrines. Finding the Lord. Jalaluddin Rumi was a great 13th century Sufi poet from Iran who wrote in Persian. Here is an excerpt from his work. He was not on the cross of the Christians. I went to the Hindu temples. In none of them was there any sign. He was not in the heights or in the lowlands. I went to the Kaaba of Mecca. He was not there. I asked about him from Avicenna, the philosopher. He was beyond the range of Avicenna. I looked into my heart. In that his place I saw him. He was in no other place. New religious developments in North India. The period after the 13th century saw a new wave of the Bhakti movement in North India. This was an age when Islam, Brahmanical Hinduism, Sufism, various strands of Bhakti, and the Nakpans, Siddhas, and Yogis influenced one another. We saw that new towns, chapter 6, and kingdoms, chapter 2, 3, and 4, were emerging, and people were taking up new professions and finding new roles for themselves. Such people, especially craftspersons, peasants, traders, and laborers, thrown to listen to those new saints and spread their ideas. Figure, Chaitanya Deva, a 16th century Bhakti saint from Bengal, preached selfless devotion to Krishna Radha. In the picture you see a group of his followers engaged in ecstatic dancing and singing. Some of them, like Kabir and Baba Guru Nanak, rejected all orthodox religion. Others, like Tulsidas and Surdas, accepted existing beliefs and practices but wanted to make these accessible to all. Tulsidas conceived of God in the form of Rama. Tulsidas's composition, the Ramcharitmanas, written in Awadhi, a language used in eastern Uttar Pradesh, is important both as an map, major Bhakti saints and the regions associated with them. Jammu and Kashmir, Guru Nanak 15th to 16th century, Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Dadu 16th to 17th century, Mirabai 16th century, Gujarat, Narsi Mehta 15th century, Diu, Daman and Diu, Ganeshwar 13th century, Arabian Sea, Namdev 13th to 14th century, Eknath 16th century, Tukaram 16th century, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Shurdas 16th century, Ramananda 16th century, Kabir 15th to 16th century, Raidas 15th century, Pallavacharya 15th to 16th century, Tulsidas 16th to 17th century, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Sikkim, Shankaradeva 15th to 16th century, Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, West Bengal, Chaitanya Deva 15th to 16th century, Odisha, Ramdas 17th century, Andhra Pradesh, Basavanna 12th century, Karnataka, Purandara Dasha 15th to 16th century, Tamil Nadu, Manikavasagar 9th century, Ramanuja 11th to 12th century, Namalvar 9th century, Kerala, Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean. The essence of Shankaradeva's devotion came to be known as Eka Sharana Nama Dharma, supreme surrender to the One. The teaching of Shankaradeva were based on the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Purana. He also encouraged the establishment of Shatra or monasteries for transmission of knowledge. His major composition included Kirtana Ghosha. Expression of his devotion and as a literary work, Surdas was an ardent devotee of Krishna. His composition compiled in the Shurshagara, Shura Sadavali and Sahitya Lahari express his devotion. Also contemporary was Sankaradeva of Assam, late 15th century, who emphasized devotion to Vishnu and composed poems and plays in Assamese. He began the practice of setting up namghars or houses of recitations and prayers, a practice that continues to date. This tradition also included saints like Dadu Dayal, Ravidas, and Mirabai. Mirabai was a Rajput princess married into the royal family of Mewar in the 16th century. Mirabai became a disciple of Ravidas, a saint from a caste considered untouchable. She was devoted to Krishna and composed innumerable bhajanas expressing her intense devotion. Her songs also openly challenged the norms of the upper castes and became popular with the masses in Rajasthan and Gujarat. A unique feature of most of the saints is that their works were composed in regional languages and could be sung. They became immensely popular and were handed down orally from generation to generation. Usually the poorest, most deprived communities and women transmitted these songs, often adding their own experiences. Thus the songs as we have them today are as much a creation of the saints as of generation of people who sang them. They have become a part of our living popular culture. An important contribution of Bhakti science was towards the development of music. Jayadeva of Bengal composed the Gita Govinda in Sanskrit, each song composed in a particular raga and tala. A significant impact that these saints had on music was the use of bhajan, kirtan and abhang. These songs, which emphasized on emotional experience, had a tremendous appeal to the common people. Beyond the Rana's palace. This is a song composed by Mirabai. Ranaji, I have left your norms of fame and false decorum of the princely life. I have left your town, and yet, Rana, why have you kept up enmity against me? Rana, you gave me a cup of poison. I drank it laughing. And Rana, I will not be destroyed by you. And yet, Rana, why have you kept up enmity against me? Why do you think Mirabai left the Rana's palace? Figure Mirabai. A closer look. Kabir. Kabir, who probably lived in the 15th to 16th centuries, was one of the most influential saints. He was brought up in a family of Muslim Julahas or weavers settled in or near the city of Benares, Varanasi. We have little reliable information about his life. We get to know of his ideas from a vast collection of verses called Shakis and Paths, said to have been composed by him and sung by wandering bhajan singers. Some of these were later collected and preserved in the Guru Granth Sahib, Panchbani and Bijak. In Search of the True Lord, here is a composition of Kabir. O Allah Ram, present in all living beings, have mercy on your servants, O Lord. Why bump your head on the ground? Why bathe your body in water? You kill and you call yourself humble, but your vices you conceal. 24 times the Brahmana keeps the Akadashi first, while the Kaji observes the Ramjan. Tell me, why does he set aside the 11 months to seek spiritual fruit in the 12th? Hari dwell in the east, they say, and Allah resides in the west. Search for him in your heart, in the heart of your heart. There he dwells, Rahim Ram. In what ways are the ideas in this poem similar to or different from those of Basavana and Jalaluddin Rumi? Comment this. Kabir working on a loom. Figure. Kabir's teachings were based on a complete, indeed vehement rejection of the major religious tradition. His teaching openly ridiculed all forms of external worship of both Brahmanical Hinduism and Islam, the preeminence of the priestly classes and the caste system. The language of his poetry was a form of spoken Hindi widely understood by ordinary people. He also sometimes used cryptic language, which is difficult to follow. Kabir believed in a formless supreme God and preached that the only path to salvation was through bhakti or devotion. Kabir drew his followers from among both Hindus and Muslims. A closer look, Baba Guru Nanak. We knew more about Baba Guru Nanak 1469 to 1539 than about Kabir, born at Talwandi, Nankana Sahib in Pakistan. He travelled widely before establishing a centre at Kartarpur, Dera Baba Nanak on the river Ravi, a regular worship that consisted of the singing of his own hymns was established there for his followers. Irrespective of their former creed, caste, or gender, his followers ate together in the common kitchen langar. The sacred space thus created by Baba Guru Nanak was known as Dharmsal. It is now known as Gurudwara. Figure: Baba Guru Nanak as a young man in discussion with holy men. Before his death in 1539, Baba Guru Nanak appointed one of his followers as his successors. His name was Lena, but he came to be known as Guru Angad, signifying that he was a part of Baba Guru Nanak himself. Guru Angad compiled the composition of Baba Guru Nanak, to which he added his own in a new script known as Gurumukhi. The three successors of Guru Angad also wrote under the name of Nanak, and all of their compositions were compiled by Guru Arjan in 1604. To this compilation were added the writings of other figures like Sheikh Farid, Sant Kabir, Bhagat Namdev, and Guru Tegh Bahadur. In 1706, this compilation was authenticated by Guru Tegh Bahadur's son and successors, Guru Gobind Singh. It is now known as Guru Granth Sahib, the holy scripture of the Sikhs. Figure: an early manuscript of the Guru Granth Sahib. The number of Baba Guru Nanak's followers increased through the 16th century under his successors. They belonged to a number of castes, but traders, agriculturists, artisans, and craftsmen predominated. This may have something to do with Baba Guru Nanak's insistence that his followers must be householders and should adopt productive and useful occupation. They were also expected to contribute to the general funds of the community of followers. By the beginnings of the 17th century, the town of Ramdaspur, Amritsar, had developed around the central Gurudwara called Harmandir Sahib Golden Temple. It was virtually self-governing, and modern historians refer to the early 17th century Sikh community as a state within the state. The Mughal Emperor Jahangir looked upon them as a potential threat, and he ordered the execution of Guru Arjan in 1606. The Sikh movement began to get politicized in the 17th century, a development which culminated in the institution of the Khalsa by Guru Gobind Singh in 1699. The community of the Sikhs, called the Khalsa Panth, became a political entity. The changing historical situation during the 16th and 17th centuries influenced the development of the Sikh movement. The idea of Baba Guru Nanak had a huge impact on this development from the very beginning. He emphasized the importance of the worship of one God. He insisted that caste, creed, or gender was irrelevant for attaining liberation. His idea of liberation was not that of a state of inner bliss, but rather the pursuit of active life with a strong sense of social commitment. He himself used the terms Nam, Dan, and Isnan for the essence of his teaching, which actually meant right worship, welfare of others, and purity of conduct. His teachings are now remembered as Nam Japna, Kirt Karna, and Ban Chakna, which also underline the importance of right belief and worship, honest living, and helping others. Thus, Baba Guru Nanak's idea of equality had social and political implications. This might partly explain the difference between the history of the followers of Baba Guru Nanak and the history of the followers of the other religious figures of the medieval centuries, like Kabir, Rabidas, and Dadu, whose ideas were very similar to those of Baba Guru Nanak. Martin Luther and the Reformation. Elsewhere, the 16th century was a time of religious ferment in Europe as well. One of the most important leaders of the changes that took place within Christianity was Martin Luther, 1483 to 1546. Luther felt that several practices in the Roman Catholic Church went against the teaching of the Bible. He encouraged the use of the language of ordinary people rather than Latin and translated the Bible into German. Luther was strongly opposed to the practice of indulgences or making donations to the church so as to gain forgiveness from sins. His writings were widely disseminated with the growing use of the printing press. Many Protestant Christian sects trace their origins to the teachings of Luther. Figure: title page of the German Bible translated by Martin Luther. Imagine you are attending a meeting where a saint is discussing the caste system. Relate the conversation. Comment this. Keywords: Bira Saivism, Bhakti, Sufi, Khanka. Let's recall. Let's understand. Let's discuss. Let's do. Do this and comment this.